What if you had a chance to make first contact, but in making first contact, you were driven insane? Tonight we're going to continue our critical look at the anthology Burning Chrome by William Gibson, which came out in the mid-80s. Tonight's story is Hinterlands, which was published in 1981 in Omni magazine. The editor at the time was Ellen Dotlow. This is the fifth story in the anthology Burning Chrome. And if you'll check, I have a playlist that lists the other four, and you can check them out. The title of the story, Hinterlands, is probably a bit of a play on words, because if you look at a top-down image of the Milky Way, we are often said to be in the hinterlands of the Milky Way. The main character in the story, Hinterlands, is a man named Toby, who has been recruited to welcome people back from their trips on what we call the highway, other people call a river, but it's pointed out that the loneliness of the task lends itself much more to being described as a highway more than anything else. What it actually is that someone has discovered a singularity, and what we're dealing with is some kind of wormhole technology. The story Hinterlands is probably a dabble by William Gibson into the topic of space opera, and more to the point, it's space operatic horror, and the brand of horror that you're encountering here is the eldritch horror of H.P. Lovecraft. The highway is discovered by accident. The Russians discover it while in transit between Earth and the planet Mars. And the pilot who discovers it is Olga, and she didn't even really need to be out there. She was going out there just to get extra hours flight time. And she stumbled upon the singularity through a process that's explained in the story, and she disappeared. And she disappeared for a long time. And when she came back, that's when they knew something truly extraordinary had happened. And so this became a process that they wanted to make repeatable. In the course of the story, what we learn is that the Russians recruit the help of the rest of the world, and a space station is built, and that space station is called Heaven. And there are various levels and layers to this setup, and the people who work with it, including our main character Toby, are there to greet the people who eventually return. We really have no idea if they're going to go. We really have no idea if they're going to come back. But when they come back with things. They come back with seashells of animal forms that we have no idea what they are. They come back with bracelets that decode a cure for cancer. And they also come back with technical diagrams that are going to completely change how other things are understood. And they also come back completely broken. So one of the elements in the story is that as soon as technology starts coming back, or ideas start coming back, or even the possibility, the whole world is ready to join in and start spending money and helping out, because everybody wants to get their hands on whatever this crazy, strange, alien new technology is. And the reason that many speculate that the story is called Hinterlands is because some of the technology that comes back to us from these alien remote locations that we're assuming they come from is that the highway itself is a type of amazing super tech, but some of the stuff that we're getting back is comparable tech to us. And that means that, the summation is that we are not the only ones who found the highway, and that many other people are using it, and that when our people get to whatever the destination is, the things that they're encountering there, or the things that they're seeing, possibly the builders of the highway, who would be a super race of some kind, or the beings that they encounter along the way, are completely breaking the people who encounter them. And this is an interesting concept that goes back to H.P. Lovecraft with his concept of eldritch horror. And that is that, if you see the old gods, or you summon them, or you encounter them in your travels, that to look upon them is to go insane. Gibson's use of this approach within the story is just a fascinating idea that there are things out there in reality that are so terrifying that they defy reality, they defy definition. And when you see them and you try to name them and define them, it will be your undoing. And so this is what the adventurous pilots and astronauts journeying within this story encounter. It's very compelling to imagine that if something like this came up and everybody knew what was going on, there would still be people who would be willing to sign up and give this a try. And would they be doing it for the good of humanity? Would they be patriots, either communist or capitalist? Because at the time, those were two very real factors. You know, a hero is a hero no matter where they're from, right? But what these people suffer when they do this is unspeakable. The interesting thing that I found to think about as the story moved along was that what kind of people really are willing to step off on a near-suicide mission like this? In fact, it's not a near-suicide mission. It's a guaranteed suicide mission. And if it is indeed a suicide mission, it is the type of mission that attracts suicidal people. There are aspects of the story that come through later that make this idea somewhat more clear. And one of the things that happens is that when some people go floating out in space to be selected by the singularity to make the trip, they don't get to go. And our main character is one such person. And you know, you get to know him in the story, and you see that as a person, he is severely broken. But so is everybody else who's trying to make the trip. We might be sending our best and our brightest astronauts and travelers and adventurers out onto the highway to see what they can come back with for the benefit of all mankind. But no one is really concerned with what's happening to these people. These people are sacrificial lambs to the fires of progress. Another thing to ponder is that any program like this is going to have a certain personality type that it's looking for. The current space program and past space programs have always looked for certain qualities in people, and those people knew that they could possibly die, but there were also many variables that showed them that they could come back alive. And for the most part, people involved in space programs do come back alive. And you've got to wonder, what's going on in the mind of somebody who's willing to step up and take a risk like that. So by the time people are doing this in this story, all of the bugs of space travel like that have been worked out, and yet people are still willing to step up and lay their lives on the line. So one of the interesting dynamics in the story for me is that the people who are there to greet the returning travelers are as hell-bent on their own destruction as the people who actually get to take the trip. They're all basically peas in a pod. And as a matter of fact, the people who are sent to greet any returning traveler are usually, they're linked to them through various genetic markers and pheromones and other things, so that the returning damaged astronaut or traveler will react to that person in the best way possible, because they want to try to get information out of them. They want to know what they saw, what they experienced. Why are they trying to kill themselves when they get back? And what is whatever they brought back with them? Because of course, the most important thing is every one of them brings something back. An interesting aspect of the story was that I found myself often thinking of the, there's the Fermi paradox, but then there's also the dark forest theory, which is, that the best thing to do in a universe is hide. You don't really want to draw any attention to yourself. So the super beings that built the highway aren't really concerned with that, but we're not super beings. We're living out in the hinterlands. And even in the story, we're described as Hicks. These are all just turns of a phrase, but technologically speaking and evolutionarily speaking, compared to whoever built the highway and the singularity that connects to it, we really are Hicks. So we really do need to be careful, because isn't it possible that sooner or later something's going to follow one of our travelers back to us? This is definitely a 5-star short story within this anthology. Many people say that this is their favorite one, and it's the one that they read over and over. I remember being excited to read this the first time through because Matt at Bookpilled really liked this one too, when he did a review of the entire anthology, Burning Chrome. So when I went looking for other people's reviews online, I did find a few people saying that they really enjoyed this. I also noticed something, and so I thought I would let you know. Many people enjoyed this story much more on a second read. So what I recommend maybe is read it once and then listen to it, because it's all over YouTube. You can find people reading it. I believe there's even a reading of it on Escape Pod. The story ends with a revelation and a validation, maybe a denouement of sorts, that is very telling, and I'm not going to journey anywhere near it even talking about it because I don't want to ruin it for you. I really, of course, want you to come to those realizations on your own because it is very telling. And as one other person mentioned, and I thought they summed it up quite well, this is a short story that ends with a bit of a gut punch.